Hi, and I'm so happy that you have joined us for tonight's online crop. And this is actually take 3. So if I choke to death or I happen to have the phone ring or die, I'm going to keep going. I apologize. Every time I've tried to make this video, either it was the phone or I choked on a peanut. So we're just going to go from here. One thing I really want to show you in this tutorial tonight is that to make the flowers that I make so that they match my books, I actually just use my punches. I do have a Cricut, but to be honest with you, I don't like to stop and take the time. So I have punched all of my flowers out of this coordinating paper. This is the Marion Smith album I made. I cut out the butterfly. So you see, you can make your own embellishments without having to run out in the middle of making your project to Joann's or Michael's and to try and find those flowers that maybe will match, maybe won't match. So I'm going to show you a couple of different things that I make, and I actually just use punches. So I'll go through the punches, but first I want to go through some of the flowers. Here's one, and one thing that I did, because I had to see all the hoopla, and I've been crafting for years, of the Prima flowers. Prima flowers are very popular and nice, but when I opened the package, I was actually, to be honest with you, quite shocked. This is no more than what I'm going to show you to make using this. They've taken 3 layers, 2 different sizes, a small one and then these 2, and actually they've spritzed it with water, and that's it. So I'm going to show you, as you can see, this is one whole punch flower. When I got these, and we're paying $5 and $6 for these, I was disappointed, but I was happy because I was like, my flowers look better than this. So this is one type of flower with a punch. See how much fuller also you can make yours. You can make them also just like those Prima flowers. I usually go a little bit fuller unless they're inside my book. Here's that itty bitty tiny little rose that everybody wants to add in to their flowers. See how we kind of hide them on the side there to add fullness and coordination. This is what I call my water lily, and actually with this punch you can do so much. And again, look how full and pretty that is. This is the rose. Now this is with the Home Sweet Home paper line that I made, and this was the old way. I'm going to show you a new and easier way, especially excuse me, if you have bigger fingers or your fingers maybe, you know, hurt. I have an easier way to make the rose. Now these are fun. Different thicknesses. I'm going to show you how to make the pom-pom flower. This also serves 2 purposes. You can make the pom-poms, which are gorgeous to hang off of your banners if you're making banners. They are beautiful on your vintage albums, on your feminine, maybe your baby albums. I'm actually going to be using these on my 4th of July album on the front, and they're cute, they're simple to make, they take not even 5 minutes. So we're going to get started. I am using the smaller roll, and I get these at Hobby Lobby. You can pick these up in the bigger rolls, and that's fine. You can use the bigger roll. So we're going to start by just rolling off maybe 2 yards. It's up to you. Now I'm going to cut that off. I don't even measure. Now I'm going to cut off another length, about 7 inches. I need a longer length than just cutting off the end so I can tie. Now we're going to start with our fingers, of course, or you can use a piece of cardboard if you prefer to wrap it around cardboard, and you're just going to wrap your flower. Again, if you want it fuller, just pull off some more of the netting. So when we get to the end, you're going to take it off, and it's going to fall apart, and you're going to think, oh, it's going to be messy. It's going to be just fine. We're going to take this long piece, give it a few twists right down the middle, tighten a knot, and this way you can be your albums will coordinate better. You can make your own flowers how you want them. And here's a different example. See how I matched my cover? So you can match your covers, you can do your own thing, you don't have to run out to the store. Now you have a choice here. I'm going to actually use my sewing scissors. You can go through the center of all of your loops. You'll have to go back a little bit, okay? Or you can do like I do. I just grab it at the end, cut in here. Don't get your fingers. Cut that end right off. Let's do a little bit of fluffing. Now, as you can see, you also have the pom-pom. And I know many of you already know how to make these. But if you're going to use it for a flower, what I like to do is I like to go around the edge a little bit more. Make it a little bit smaller. And then I just take my scissors in somewhat at an angle and cut those layers a little bit more to give it a little more of a raggedy look. Just get rid of this. And then for my center, you can choose a lot of different things. You can even make a flower that will go on the inside of this. Then you have all this pretty fullness. Or you can even have some store-bought ones that maybe you want to go ahead and put in the middle. And you can do bling. So you have a lot of choices. I'm going to go ahead and use bling. And I still, even though there's some sticky, I'm going to add the glue in the middle. Add my bling, push it down. Now, what I do is I come back here and I'm going to just cut off some of those pieces. They are hard to see on camera, so I can make sure it is down nice and flat. You may want to go ahead and straighten up your edges some more. And there you have the pom-poms, pom-pom flowers made out of your netting tool. And then on this one, I did go ahead and cut out just the 5-petal. I put it on the back, and you can see how it adds the color to the white. So you can do that, especially if you're coordinating with an album. So there is our pom-pom flower. Now let me show you a few of the tools that I use. A couple of the tools that I use, this is by McGill, are McGill flower tools. And as you can see, it's well loved. But it's not my favorite. You can also buy the children's pieces of foam, you know, from the foam crafts. It works great, but this does tear and kind of break up over time. What I love is my grandkids were getting iPads for Christmas, and I actually had gotten an iPad, and the foam cover over the front is awesome. You can also get this in other packing. Maybe you have other electronics. So this is an invaluable tool. Another thing, if you don't have the little rounded balls, you can use the back of your tweezers if you have a Cricut, the back of my tweezer pick, or you can even just use the back of a pencil. So you don't need to have specialized tools. And the punches that I like to use, and they've all come from Michael's or Hobby Lobby. I use, of course, the 5-petal. They're my favorite. The small 5-petal and also the large. Again, 50% off when they're at Michael's or Joann's. Go grab them. You never regret it. This one is one of my favorites. It's the McGill, and it came from Hobby Lobby because I can make a lot of different flowers with this one. This one is a little more petals, but it's a beautiful, I use it for daisies. And then, of course, these two sizes. This is the one that you're going to want to use for your itty-bitty tiny flowers. So let's get started. The first one that I want to get started on is what I call my water lily. As you can see, it's got a lot of fullness, really pretty. You don't have to make it into a water lily. You'll be able to form it into others, but that's the one I'm going to show you right now. Now, you'll want to have a spray bottle of water. It doesn't have to be one of these little spritzers. It can just be a regular spray bottle. And that is basically what you're going to use to make your flowers, just like Prima. So we're going to get started with our punch. And I'm going to cut out 5 petals. And you're going to just love the fact that you can get so many flowers out of one piece of paper. Again, if you're watching TV, perfect time to do this. And 5. Now, for water lily, I also have this one that I want for a center. It's the smaller, so I'm just going to punch that out. And we're going to get started. I'm going to do 3 petals at a time. To save time, we're going to just put them together. And if you have your scissors handy, you will need your scissors for this one. You'll notice how these are all in heart shapes. So we're going to take our scissors and just cut right down the middle. Don't worry if they're not staying perfectly together, because these are flowers. Flowers in nature are not perfect, and that's what gives it more of that real look. And we're going to just go down the middle again. Okay, now as you can see, we do not need any special tools. I use my bone folder. What I'm going to do is put my bone folder right back here. I'm holding this with my thumb and forefinger, and I am just going to curl my edges. Again, no special tools required. No Cricut, nothing. Now, double-sided paper is a lot easier to work with because I will be using both sides, because I want some of my petals up for the water lily and I will want some of my petals down. They, I just pulled one off, so don't pull too hard, but it's still going to be okay. Also, when you're using double-sided paper, and especially graphic 45 paper, my favorite, because they have so many colors, designs, you do not want to get it super wet. If you get it super wet, it is going to tear all to pieces. Now, this is where your tool, the back of your Cricut pick maybe, will come in handy. You're going to want, I'm going to show you the different effects. You're going to want to go ahead and just literally poke it so that those petals start coming up. If you don't have that tool, then let's go ahead and use the back of the tweezers, craft tweezers. Again, you're just going to push it, and you're going to help those petals take some shape. Let me show you the difference if you're using one of the McGill's. And they do go fit 40%. Oh, you have a 40% off coupon you can use. So as you can see how much more I get out of that shape. Now, actually, I want these petals up. Look at that. Just brings it right up in a ball for me. And again, now for this little guy, we punched him. We're going to take our fingers and a finger and a thumb, and I like to put my index finger, and then I just take my petals and I pinch them together. They don't have to be perfect. And again, the ball. Let's take our hot glue gun, and on this one it really doesn't matter what order you go in, but you do want to stagger those petals. So let's put, since it's more, we want that shape up. And I'm gluing right in the middle. And again, let's do some staggering here. And I do want my final petals to be the up petals. But we're still going to do some manipulating here. And then we want our center. Now you'll see how the center just really brings everything together. That smaller shape. Now, you have a flower that is actually very workable right here. You'll just put something in the center. But what I like to do is I do go around and kind of give my petals some pinches. Now they are going to be really small because we cut them in half. But you're just going to give them a little bit of a pinch if you want. Maybe on the bottom. Just bring them up. Now this is where we want to do some spritzing. When you spritz it, it gives it that worn down, more natural look. Oh, and then also, I'm going to take a coordinating color, and I'm going to take my punch again. We're going to punch one more, and I'm not really going to do much with this little guy. I'm just going to kind of pinch in the center. And you can see I used the brown, just the craft cardstock on that, because I wanted it to look like it was sitting in the pond. And put some glue on the back. Sort of give it a center. That will show more after you spritz your flower. Don't get it too wet. I just like to hold it up, get a little bit of that moisture in there. Now, here's the trick. When it's drying, You really don't want to do too much to it. While it's still wet, go ahead and give it some squishes up, okay? We're going to set this little guy aside, and if you have a way to dry it, maybe you have the heat gun or you have a heater, go ahead and do that. But we're going to set him aside till last. So we're going to set it aside. We're not going to play too much with it. We're going to let it dry, and we'll come back to that flower. Let's move on to our rose. This is a very popular one that everybody likes to make. And for the rose, again, we're going to use our big punch. I'm going to use a solid paper with the rose, and I'm going to punch out 5. Solid paper is actually really fun to use. You can use your sparkles, you can use your colors, and really decorate it. Now what I like to do is just put my finger in there, and we're going to go ahead and pinch. And I know that some of this is monotonous, but I didn't want to fast forward through anything where some of you are just learning and wanting to know how to make the flowers. Again, you can make these from any size. For the roses, it is better to use your larger 5-petal. It just makes things easier. Now, some of you have watched my video on how I made roses before. This is a lot simpler. So, let's go ahead, take our foam. We're not going to do too much. We're just going to give it a little, I'm just poking down, getting it a little shape here. Glue in the middle. Off center it. So I got a little wet. I'm going to push it as I'm going. Again, I'm going to stagger my petal. And with this flower, actually, you've got a beautiful flower just like that you can use, dress up, or now what we're going to do, we're going to bring these 5 petals in the middle up, just like that. And you're going to just kind of work them in together, and you'll see how your rose center starts taking shape. So we just bring it together like that. That is one way if you trust yourself with glue. Otherwise, take these opposing petals, and on this one, you're going to put a little bit of glue right there on the outside and a little bit of glue on the inside. Then you're going to take the petal right across from it, and you're going to wrap it right on there. Now I love this tool from Cricut, or you can go to Walmart in the dental section or in a drugstore, and they're the teeth scrapers, I call them. Or if you have a dentist in the family, beg them for one. So we have the beginning of our center. Then you have 3 petals here. We're going to go ahead and add glue right up the middle, about not quite halfway up that flower, and you're just going to bring them together. Hold them. You can use your wet glue. You will just have to do, you're holding a little bit longer. Now let's do some squishing and get our shape. Now, I'm going to bring up our next layer. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to roll my edges. Again, just using my bone folder. Start at the tip and just bend it over. Again, you can leave your flower just like this, or again, we're going to bring up right down there at the bottom, stay at the very bottom, okay, and then just bring your petals up. So you can see your rose is now taking shape, and you may have to put a little bit of glue here and there. And we're going to go to our second layer. I'm just going to bend the tips of my petals again. Now, let me grab this book on my Marion Smith. I actually had pinched them together. I only did that, what we just did, the center and the side, and I left these just like that. Depending on your paper, you can do that. The heavier the paper, actually the more it will hold its shape, and you don't have to glue it. Now see, this is not as heavy as a paper, so and I just pulled it off because it was wet. I would not feel comfortable leaving my flower just like this because it won't hold its shape. This is a paper from a local craft store, and it's just not very strong. So now we're on our other layer. I'm going to add some more glue around the bottom here. And I'm just going to bring my petals up. This is what I'm showing you is messy, and I apologize. I wouldn't leave all this glue hanging. I would clean it up, but for the sake of the video and the time, I'm going to go ahead and just leave it. Now, let's go ahead and do our fourth layer. And you can keep shaping as you go. Now, this is totally up to you. Do you want to glue your petals up? Just play with it. Grab it like you would your hair and start bringing things together. You can actually leave it. You can fill it in some more if you like. And then I take my last punch. Let's just punch another piece of paper. Here you can use green. If you want to use solid green, it'll give you more like the greenery underneath your rose. Let's go ahead and add our greenery there. Now, if I brought my petals up some more, like I said, we would do each layer the same. You would see that greenery. Some more. Now let me show you. You can also, if you want to give it more of that look that we saw on Prima, just go ahead and spray it. Now when you spray your flowers, again, you play with it, give it some bending up, because it will settle. You're going to lose a little bit of your shape. Then you're going to set it aside and let it dry, and you'll have that crumpled look that you saw from Prima. Aren't you amazed how easy these flowers are to make? And for this one, I want to show you this punch. This is where I used this punch, and I also used my smaller 5-petal one that's kind of ragged at the edges. And so again, I'm going to go ahead and punch out, and the standard that I usually use is 5 to 6 flowers. And I'm going to go with 6 on this one, and 1 in the center. And this is a little bit harder, so you're going to have to take each petal and just bend it, crumple it. Okay, now on this one, I'm just going to show you, I'm going to bend and crumple just the one. Okay, and we're going to start layering it. You can also make these flowers without bending and crumpling your centers. Otherwise, if you want the look of this one, that's where I did bend all of my petals. And I probably should have had some pre-made. I apologize, but now you can see a little bit of both. You also can do it without bending all your petals. This one's a little bit trickier because they are smaller on staggering your petals, but try and get that every other one. Now, on this one, I am going to go ahead and bend my petals up where I didn't squeeze them all together, as it's called. I wouldn't recommend doing this part of the flower when it's wet. if you're going to use these smaller petals, because these will tear. So now again, if you want to crumple your leaves, see the difference? Now for the center, I always do crumple the center of my flowers, unless I'm going to keep them flat. My table was a little bit wet, so I'm going to put those right in there. Again, you can take these to your foam pad, and you can squish up that center, or you can just leave them as is. And then again, I would put in, if I was going to be using this, I would put in one of my blingy centers. And again, you can spritz it with water, just depending on the look that you want. So you can see, you can come up with tons and tons of different flowers that you can use for your albums that look like you store-bought them. Let me show you our last flower, and then we'll get on to our challenge, and it is the Prima. So we're going to punch out 2 of those, and one of the small ones. Oh no, I have the little tiny one to show you. So we'll quickly go through this. So for the Prima, there's a little bit of a different, what you want to do is take your ball, and on the petal is how they got that look. Okay, and then you just kind of smash it down. But you want to stay in this petal area. And I wanted to show you how the different size balls kind of give you a different indentation in your paper. So sometimes you might even want to mix and match that. I lost one of my flowers. Here we go. Now for the Prima, they definitely wet theirs. So let's go ahead, blue in the center. And our center one. I never put down my bling until after it dries. Now, if you want to get that Prima look, let's go ahead and round these tips a little bit. Bone folder, I like the bone folder. You can use a paintbrush, anything that you actually choose. Now, to really get it a Prima look, let's go ahead and spray it with our water, get it somewhat wet, and again, you're going to set this aside because you want this to dry. If you start playing with it too much, it will tear, but when it dries, you will have that Prima flower look. Now here's the one that we had, where's our one we got really wet? Here we go. You can see it's starting to dry, and now we can really, you can start playing a little bit more with your petals. Shape them out, push them in. Now this is dry enough, I'm comfortable with working. One thing that is a lot easier, if you do have the tweezers, it helps you hold on to it while playing with the other side. Then shape it until you get the shape that you want, and then you've got your water lily. Okay, let me just wipe this up, and let's make our teeny tiny flower. This one is so easy. So with this one, I use about 5 layers, 5 to 6 layers also. You will want something pretty small that can go into the center. These are really tiny. I just spread them out on my phone, and you just want to go in the middle till they all roll up, just like a roly-poly outside. That's what my granddaughter always tells me. Are you making roly-polies? Okay, you do want, I do use tweezers for this one because it is tight. And then I take the glue on the bottom. All right, let's put that one down. I did get too much glue. Let's do it from the back. These are a little, like I said, a little harder to stagger your petals. Again, while it's still wet, I like to push on that center so you can see it's starting to take the shape of our little tiny rose. These are tight little guys. You can also use your tweezers. Just don't push too hard. They will go through the center. Add our others. And as you're making this one, you'll be like, oh, it's getting so big, it's not going to take shape, but it will. These are wonderful. Okay. Now, you have your itty bitty flower, and then I just use my tweezers or my pick to do some separation of the petals. And there you have the teeny flower. And you made them yourself. They match your albums. You don't have to really go out and buy anything special. And I really hope that you enjoyed this little tutorial. And if we play with this one a little bit more, it's pretty wet. And if you need any assistance on making any of these flowers, this video will be available also on YouTube so that you can refer back to on how to make